Okay.
My name is Caden Price, and my topic is on burnout in collegiate level sports. Burnout is a fairly common event that unfortunately is a factor that leads to many athletes quitting their sport. Defined burnout is, quote, a psychological, emotional, and sometimes physical withdrawal from an activity in response to excessive stress or dissatisfaction, end quote. The event leading up to burnout are overtraining, the lack of periodized training, and staleness in combination with excessive negative stress for prolonged periods of time. By strictly overtraining instead of implementing periodized training, which is giving athletes a high intensity workout followed by lower intensity workouts known as rest periods, the athletes never get a needed rest period to recuperate from the intense workout, thus leading to exhaustion. Staleness is, quote, a state in which the athlete has difficulty maintaining standard training regimens and can no longer achieve previous performance results, end quote, and is an indication that burnout might occur. Repetitive occurrences of these events ultimately end up with an athlete's burnout. There are many models that explain why burnout occurs among athletes, two of which are applicable to collegiate athletes. The first model is a negative training stress response model, which simply states that the athlete can either experience positive or negative stress. If the athlete experiences positive stress, this can be an adaptive result in the athlete learning and growing because of the experience. If the athlete experiences negative stress, it results in the feeling of overtraining, which leads to staleness and burnout. A second theory many collegiate athletes can relate to is a commitment and entrapment theory. This theory explains that athletes participate in sports because they want to, because they feel that they have to, or for both reasons. He argued that athletes are prone to burnout when, quote, they feel entrapped by sport, when they do not really want to participate in it, but believe they must maintain their involvement, end quote. This entrapment leads to athletes despising the sport that they once loved because they feel stuck and have a sense of obligation to stay. This leads to decreased performance and enjoyment and eventually burnout. Third theory is self-determination theory, which states that athletes have a basic need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. By having each of these three needs met, the chance for experiencing burnout is much lower. Athlete burnout from overtraining is probably the most common occurrence. An example of this would be Whitney Myers, a world-class NCAA swimmer. She won the women's NCAA title 3 times, was named All-American in many events, and was named the NCAA Breakout Performer of the Year. With all of these success in one season, there was definitely a lot of pressure on Meyer to continue doing well. The pressure got to her, and she said she overtrained, which led to her bad season the following year, where she only made it to the finals in one event. Overtraining was defined here as, quote, a recognized illness similar in many physiological and psychological respects to chronic fatigue syndrome and major depression, but exactly like neither, end quote. This case is evidence that overtraining does in fact lead to decreased performance ability and motivation among athletes, and it is important to incorporate periodized training to avoid it. The big reason I chose burnout as my topic is because I watched my wife experience this throughout her collegiate career on the Utah State University's equestrian team, or competitive horseback riding team. To illustrate this, she was on the team for 3 years and was very successful at the competition. She was the highest scoring point rider in the region, which qualified her for nationals, where she took 3rd overall. From there, she got invited to an invitational competition where the top 16 riders from the collegiate equestrian associations competed against each other, and it was announced that they were the top 16 riders out of 9,500 collegiate riders in the United States. This was a huge accomplishment for her. She was the first rider from Utah State to be invited to this event of the best, but at the same time she also dreaded it. This is when she stated her burnout occurred. However, unlike the overtraining leading to staleness, she believes her burnout occurred due to undertraining. Utah State's equestrian team is a club sport, so basically anyone can sign up as long as they make it through the tryouts. Because of this, many of the riders are just doing it for fun, while others are actually doing it to win and be competitive. This was probably the hardest part of competing on the team for her, because in a way it was unstructured. They only were able to practice once a week, while other teams throughout the country practice every single day, so they were that much further behind everyone else. Also, there was not a structured workout regimen for athletes, so it was very hard for her to find the motivation to actually work out. This under training was very hard for her because she's a very competitive person with a strong drive to win. Her hard work did eventually pay off by being able to go to nationals and the invitational, but after that she had no desire to compete for a fourth and final year. The under training mentioned above also leads to staleness, as the traditional theory states. However, instead of negative stress from overtraining being the cause of burnout, boredom is the root of the burnout. Boredom can have the same negative effects of overtraining, but in the sense that the athlete is not engaged, feels the sport, and practices are a waste of time and are not resulting in any improvements in their performance. It is also hard not to have the opportunity to train as much as your competitors when you know they are out there practicing just to beat you. No matter how skilled or talented an athlete is, without consistent practice, their skills and performance will ultimately end up being below their competitors. I feel like it is important for collegiate coaches to understand these factors, which in turn will help reduce the chance of burnout among college athletes so they can continue playing the sport they love.